Picture this, a man, let's call him Bob, waking up to a sticky note on his forehead. Now, before you let your imagination run wild with the possibilities of how it got there, let me set the scene. Bob is a solitary chap living in a one-bedroom flat in the heart of London. He's got a 9-to-5 job, a goldfish named Bubbles, and a peculiar morning routine. Every day, he wakes up with a sticky note adhered to his forehead. No, he's not a sleepwalker with a strange penchant for stationery. These little yellow squares of wisdom just appear, out of the blue, every morning right between his eyebrows. You're probably wondering, what do these sticky notes say? Well, they're filled to the brim with the kind of motivational quotes that make you want to conquer the world and then make a cup of tea. Quotes like, "Even a snail reached the ark by perseverance," and "Your worth is not measured in likes, comments, notes, or followers, but in your ability to make someone smile, think, act, and change." Now, Bob's not one to be easily swayed by words, let alone words on a sticky note. But these aren't your run-of-the-mill fortune cookie phrases. They're funny, they're quirky, and they have a way of sticking with you, pun definitely intended. Bob's bemused, to say the least. He lives alone, remember? So, who's leaving these notes? Is it Bubbles the goldfish? Has his flat become the new hotspot for motivational elves? Or is it just a prank by a friend with a strange sense of humour? The mystery is as deep as a London fog, but here's the interesting bit. Despite the confusion, Bob starts to take these sticky notes seriously. He begins to see them not as a perplexing prank, but as a beacon of hope in his otherwise routine life. They become his daily dose of motivation, his morning coffee, his kickstart to the day. And so our friend Bob, fueled by these mysterious sticky notes, decided to turn his life around. Bob, not exactly known for his motivation, decided to give these sticky notes a shot. Now, Bob was a man of simple pleasures. He wasn't an Olympic sprinter, but he thought, why not give this marathon thing a whirl? Armed with a pair of worn-out sneakers and a sticky note that read, "You are stronger than you think," he set off around the block. His journey began with a slow jog, then escalated to a brisk walk, and finally, to Bob's utter disbelief, he found himself in a full-on sprint. Not because he'd tapped into some hidden reserve of strength, mind you, but because a neighborhood dog had taken a keen interest in the ham sandwich he'd tucked into his pocket for mid-run sustenance. His marathon turned into a wild chase, with Bob as the lead, the dog hot on his heels, and a trail of lettuce and ham slices left in their wake. The sticky note might not have prepared him for this particular scenario, but Bob did discover he could run a lot faster when motivated by the right incentives. Next on Bob's sticky note agenda was mastering the art of gourmet cooking. His note read, "Life is what you bake of it," so he donned an apron and set to work, determined to create a culinary masterpiece. He chopped, stirred, and sautéed his way through the kitchen, tossing ingredients into the pan with the flair of a television chef. But instead of a gourmet dish, Bob ended up with what can only be described as a fusion meal. It was an unholy alliance of pasta, peanut butter, and an unfortunate amount of chili powder. However, in a surprising twist, it was actually edible. Not just edible, but oddly tasty. Bob had inadvertently stumbled upon a new dish, a testament to his growing culinary prowess, or perhaps his unusually resilient taste buds. Each day, Bob tackled a new sticky note challenge, from salsa dancing classes, where he discovered he had 2 left feet, to DIY home repairs, resulting in a rather unique indoor water feature. With every comical misstep and unexpected success, Bob was slowly transforming. He was becoming more adventurous, more resilient, and dare we say it, more motivated. He was no longer just Bob, the man of simple pleasures. He was Bob, the dog-evading sprinter. Bob, the accidental fusion chef. Bob, the 2 left feet salsa dancer. Bob, the unintentional fountain creator. He was becoming a better version of himself, one sticky note at a time. His journey was far from perfect. It was messy, unpredictable, and often downright hilarious. But it was his journey. And each day, he was learning, growing, and laughing at himself a bit more. Despite the mishaps, Bob was slowly but surely becoming a better version of himself, all thanks to the power of sticky notes. Bob's life was changing, and not just because he was now famous for his unique fusion dish. The sticky notes, those tiny squares of paper, had sparked a transformation. They were the catalyst that turned Bob from a couch potato into a potato peeler, a garlic chopper, a master of the culinary arts, and eventually a food blogger. Bob's blog wasn't like your run-of-the-mill, picture-perfect, overly filtered food blog. No, it was something else entirely. It was a hearty stew of humor, honesty, and a sprinkle of silliness. It was a place where food met fun, where recipes came with a side of laughter. His blog wasn't just about cooking, it was about life. It was about finding joy in the mundane, about turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. It was about the magic of a perfectly toasted slice of bread, or the sublime beauty of a well-made cup of tea. It was about celebrating the small victories, like finally figuring out how to perfectly poach an egg, or successfully flipping a pancake without it landing on the floor. And people were loving it. His blog was gaining popularity faster than a sizzling steak on a hot pan. His followers were growing, his likes were shooting up, and his comments section was buzzing with activity. Bob's life was becoming more exciting, more fulfilling. He was no longer just Bob, the guy who couldn't even boil water without setting off the smoke alarm. He was now Bob, the food blogger, the chef, the rising star. He was living proof that sometimes, all it takes is a little nudge in the right direction. In Bob's case, that nudge came in the form of sticky notes. Who knew that these tiny pieces of paper could hold so much power? They were the secret ingredients in Bob's recipe for success. Bob, once an unmotivated guy, was now a rising star in the world of food blogging. And all it took was a little bit of motivation, a dash of humor, and a whole lot of sticky notes. But the question still remained, who was leaving these sticky notes? Our dear friend Bob was curious as a cat, and we all know what they say about curiosity, don't we? Well, thankfully Bob did not meet the same fate as the proverbial cat. Instead, he discovered a heartwarming secret. One fine day, Bob noticed his elderly neighbor, Mrs. O'Leary, with a familiar yellow pad in her hand. As he squinted a bit, he realized it was not just any yellow pad. It was the mother of all sticky notes. The plot thickened, like gravy on a Sunday roast. Intrigued, Bob decided to speak to Mrs. O'Leary. She was a sweet old lady who always smelled of fresh-baked cookies and kindness. As Bob approached her, he noticed that her hands were shaking slightly. She was writing something on a sticky note, the same kind of sticky note Bob had been finding. It all clicked in Bob's head like a well-oiled Rubik's Cube. Mrs. O'Leary had been the mysterious benefactor of motivational messages all along. She had been trying to inspire him without directly interfering. It was like a plot twist in a Hollywood movie. Only this was better because it was real life. And let's be honest, real life could use a bit more Hollywood sometimes. Bob was touched by her kindness. He had found a friend in the most unexpected of places. And that, my friends, is the beauty of life. It's unpredictable like a weather forecast in London. From that day forward, Bob and Mrs. O'Leary became good friends. They shared stories, laughter, and of course, sticky notes. Mrs. O'Leary's notes became a beacon of light in Bob's life, guiding him towards success. It turned out the sticky notes were not just about motivation, but also about making connections. And that's the thing about life, isn't it? It's all about those small acts, those random sticky notes that make the biggest difference. So here's to sticky notes, mystery neighbors, and unexpected friendships. Now here comes the punchline, folks. Bob, our once demotivated hero turned motivator, is now the epitome of success and inspiration. But he's not done yet. No. He decides to pass on the baton of motivation. So what does he do? He takes the sticky note tradition and gives it his own hilarious spin. Imagine this. You're walking down the street, minding your own business, when you spot a sticky note. You approach it, curiosity piqued. It reads, "Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything." A chuckle escapes your lips. Your day just got a bit brighter. Bob, with his newfound motivation, became a neighborhood sensation, leaving a trail of laughter and inspiration behind him. Each sticky note a beacon of joy, radiating positivity. He turned his life around, found success, and made others laugh, all thanks to a sticky note. And that, my friends, is how Bob found his motivation, success, and a new hobby of making people laugh, all thanks to a sticky note.